When others fall into the sea, it's a close brush with death. When I fell into the sea, I went straight ashore and became the sea god. An ancient voice, a legacy of 100,000 years, and the treasure maps of the entire ocean were all loaded into my mind. With just one casual cast of a net, I hauled up a large yellow croaker weighing over 5 gene. The market price was 4,000 per gene, and one fish was worth 2 years of living expenses for my family. I happily told the village beauty that now I finally had money to buy her a phone and marry her. But instead of being moved, she warned me with a serious face. My name is Qin Xiaochi. At first light this morning, I secretly took my family's little diesel sampan out to sea. My parents had gone to visit relatives in town and wouldn't be back for 3 days, so I finally got the chance to go out to sea alone for once. I grew up by the sea, but this was the first time I'd ever gone out alone, and I was so excited I could hardly stand it. Up ahead in the fishing grounds were wild small yellow croaker, large yellow croaker, moray eels, and big lobsters. Anything I caught would be pure profit. Unexpectedly, not long after heading out, a force 8 gale suddenly sprang up on the sea. I quickly steered toward a big reef ahead, planning to shelter from the wind. Then I noticed a small boat stranded on the reef, rocking violently in the wind. Looking closer, I realized this was bad. A girl in red was standing on the boat, frozen with fear. She turned and saw my sampan, then immediately shouted, "Qin Xiaochi, hurry and save me. The boat won't move anymore." It was Su Haicao, the beauty of our village and the college graduate village official. "Don't move around, stay steady. I'm coming." I yanked the throttle cable, and the sampan puttered forward, rushed over, and braced itself beside the reef, where I dropped anchor. The wind was so strong I could barely keep my eyes open. Gritting my teeth, I jumped onto the reef, crouched down, and edged forward step by step until I boarded her boat and grabbed her hand. "Get on my boat." The moment she stepped over the gunwale, she slipped on the reef. Fighting back tears, she said it hurt and that she couldn't walk. At a time like this, there was no room to think about anything else, so I simply hoisted her onto my back. She struggled a little, her clothes tore, and she cried out. I said, "Don't scream, hold on tight to me." Battling the force 8 sea wind for 5 minutes, I finally tossed her into my sampan. But instead of dying down, the wind only grew fiercer. If I turned back now, we'd definitely capsize if we hit big waves. I remembered there was a backwater cove ahead where we could shelter from the wind. That place was strange. No matter how strong the wind was outside, it was always calm inside, as if the sea wind deliberately skirted around it. My dad used to take me there to wait out the wind, but never for more than half an hour. He said that was where the sea god lived. It was fine to take shelter there, but we couldn't stay long, or there would be punishment. Sure enough, the moment the boat entered the backwater cove, the wind immediately vanished. I let out a sigh of relief, and my gaze unconsciously fell on Su Haicao. Her clothes were torn, leaving only her underwear. She crossed her arms over her chest to cover herself and shouted at me angrily. "What are you looking at? Some things only become harder to hide the more you try to cover them." And I was staring so hard my eyes nearly popped out. "You're still looking, pervert." Smack. She slapped me across the face. She used so much force that with a splash, she knocked me straight into the sea. I was originally a strong swimmer, not to mention in such calm water. But then something strange happened. A huge suction force came from beneath my feet, and no matter how I thrashed, I just kept sinking deeper. I held my breath and tried to call for help, but all that poured into my mouth was seawater. Through the water's surface, I saw Su Haicao shouting frantically down into the water, but no matter what, I couldn't reach her hand. My consciousness gradually blurred. I don't know how long passed before a deep, ancient voice rang out in my mind. "I have waited 100,000 years. At last, someone has come." I suddenly opened my eyes. All around me was azure seawater, and I couldn't see anything at all. It felt as if I were floating in the void. Who's speaking? I am the soul of the sea god of these waters. I have guarded these waters for 100,000 years, yet no one has ever come near me. Young man, since fate has brought you here, I shall pass the position of sea god on to you. I got goosebumps all over from what I heard. The soul of the sea god? 100,000 years? Handed over to me? Before I even had time to refuse, a vast amount of information instantly flooded into my mind. The nodes of the tides, the layers of huge schools of fish, the locations of seabed mineral deposits. I knew it all. And in the deep sea, there was no pressure at all. Instead, it felt extremely comfortable. "All right, I can leave now. Sea god." That voice disappeared completely. I had no time to think too much about it. There was still Su Haicao on the surface. I had no idea how long I had been underwater. If it had been more than half an hour, she would be in danger. I quickly swam toward the surface. When I emerged, I was startled. I had clearly gone out to sea at 6 in the morning, but now it was completely dark, with the moon hanging in the sky and stars everywhere. Had I stayed underwater for more than 10 hours? Then what about Su Haicao? Using the moonlight, I found my skiff and climbed aboard. One look, and I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. The girl had fallen asleep sprawled over the gunwale, her eyes red-rimmed and her voice hoarse from shouting. She had thought I was dead. She had cried, but she hadn't left. I walked toward the bow, and as I passed by her, the angle happened to give me a clear view of her full, swollen breasts. Even though she had underwear on, I didn't mind taking a couple more looks from that angle. She groggily opened her eyes, saw me staring at her, and jumped up in fright. Are you human or a ghost? Of course I'm human. I went around and started the engine. Didn't you fall into the water for several hours? I shouted myself hoarse, and you still didn't come up, and after one nap you just came back to life? Hearing that her voice really was hoarse and seeing that her eyes were red, my heart warmed. This girl really did care about whether I lived or died. Su Haicao had always been pretty in the village since childhood, got good grades, was admitted to college, and after graduating actually came back to be a village official. I've liked her since I was little, but every time she saw me, she acted like she was guarding against a thief. Today I saved her life, and she secretly cried because she thought I was dead. Isn't that a sign she likes me? I said, you probably slept too long. I was already back on the boat. Seeing how soundly you were sleeping, I didn't wake you up. I stayed by your side the whole time, afraid you'd fall into the sea. I don't want to banter with you. I want to go home. She pouted. Fine, but today, in order to save you, I didn't catch a single fish, and I don't even have the diesel money covered. I scratched my head. Did your phone fall into the sea? She said yes, a little heartbroken. She had bought it with her college scholarship. Then let's go catch wild large yellow croaker, sell it, and buy you a new phone, exactly the same. You? You can catch wild large yellow croaker? Huh. As long as you come with me, I guarantee we'll catch a big one. She didn't know that I was no longer the same person I used to be. The soul of the sea god had given me complete knowledge of these waters. I knew exactly where to find wild large yellow croaker. I focused my attention on wild large yellow croaker, and immediately sensed a cluster of bright yellow light on the sea surface 1 kilometer away. There's some over there. The skiff puttered over, and I told her to help me cast the net. Working together, we spread the net into the sea. While waiting to haul it in, I casually asked her what kept her busy as a village official. Poverty alleviation. There are still many poor households like yours in the village. First, you need to study and attend classes to change your mindset. Living off the mountain if you're by the mountain, living off the sea if you're by the sea. It's enough if fishing brings in a good catch. So what's the point of taking classes? As we were talking, I suddenly saw a bright yellow ball of light approaching from the lower side. Haul in the net. Quick. I immediately started cranking the winch. She helped from behind as well. We hauled the net up meter by meter, and quite a few fish were hanging on it. Rockfish, blackhead fish, and filefish. Wow. Even though there's no large yellow croaker, so many fish can still sell for quite a bit of money. I didn't relax, because that yellow ball of light was getting closer and closer. When the last meter of the fishing net was pulled out of the water, an enormous wild large yellow croaker appeared, nearly 60 centimeters long. This really is a wild large yellow croaker. It's huge. She covered her mouth and exclaimed, at least 5 Gene. Open the live well, quick. We hurriedly put the lively, flopping large yellow croaker into it. We're going to be rich. Her voice was trembling. I've never seen one this big before. Taking advantage of her excitement, I asked again, I saved your life today, so how about being in a relationship with me? Relationship my ass. Sell the fish first, then buy me a new phone and we'll talk. She said with a laughing curse, while I felt secretly delighted. At 9 that evening, we went ashore and returned to the little fishing village. She reminded me that if anyone asked, I should say we had gone tittapooling together today. Just as she finished and was about to leave, a car drove onto the pier. The window rolled down, and a yellow-haired guy stuck his head out. Haicao, tonight your bro will treat you to drinks and KTV in the city. It was Ma Tianbao, the village bully. Relying on the Ma family's power, he was always trying to get with Su Haicao. His relatives even gossiped everywhere, saying the two of them were a perfect match and destined for a happy marriage. Su Haicao didn't want to go and said it was too late. Seeing that her clothes were disheveled, Ma Tianbao had indecent thoughts and said he'd take her into the city to buy new clothes. Carrying the fish box, I walked over and stood in front of the car. Haicao? Then it's settled. I'll sell the fish and buy you a new phone, and you'll be in a relationship with me. When Ma Tianbao heard this, he stuck his head out of the car window. Popper, what makes you think you can? Why don't you take a piss and look at yourself? What kind of phone can you afford? Get lost. In the past, I was so used to being bullied by him that I would definitely have slipped away at once. But today was different. I said, I'm going to buy her an Apple phone. Move aside. I'm taking Haicao home. Ma Tianbao's face darkened. So I've been too nice to you, huh? If you don't move, I'll run you over. Afraid something would happen, Su Haicao tried to smooth things over, saying at worst she'd go with him. I said I wouldn't let him. Ma Tianbao slammed on the gas, and the car charged over with a buzz. Su Haicao screamed. There was a loud bang, but I wasn't sent flying. I didn't budge an inch, and I even smashed a punch into the hood, denting it. I was stunned myself. This was the power of the sea god, with the weight of 10,000 Jin. Not only did the car fail to injure me, I actually damaged it instead. Ma Tianbao grabbed an iron rod from the car and rushed over, raising his hand to strike. I snatched the rod and backhanded him across the face. Su Haicao was beside us, shouting anxiously for us to stop fighting. Gripping the iron rod, I said coldly, Ma Tianbao, make another move and I'll break your leg today. He was both shocked and furious, with no idea what had gotten into me today. But seeing that he couldn't beat me, he put away the iron rod and pointed at the hood. You damaged my new car. I'll have my cousin deal with you. At those words, both Su Haicao and I went pale. His cousin, Ma Tianxiang, was the fish tyrant of the village. He controlled fish prices and had more than a dozen thugs under him. Anyone who disobeyed him was dealt with by force, and many honest families had suffered at his hands. Su Haicao immediately pleaded, Brother Tianbao, Xiaochi didn't do it on purpose. Could you let him apologize to you? But I said firmly, I damaged your car, so I'll pay for it. Fine, pay me 10,000 yuan. If you can't come up with it within 3 days, don't blame me for calling my cousin. Ma Tianbao left after making that threat. Su Haicao felt very guilty and asked me what we should do. I said it was fine. Didn't we catch a large yellow croaker? When I got home, I turned on that old desktop computer and searched how much a 5-gene wild large yellow croaker could sell for. The internet was painfully slow, and it took half a minute for the results to come up. I clicked on the first search result and jumped straight up from the stool. Wild large yellow croakers weighing more than 5 gene are extremely rare. If you have a live one, please contact our company. We will purchase it directly for cash at a price of no less than 4,000 yuan per gene. I had mine weighed, 5 gene and 4 liang. Even at 4,000 per gene, that's 21,600. One fish, more than 20,000? Our village is a poor village with annual per capita household income under 10,000, which comes to only about 1,000 a month. Usually, when I catch fish, I can't bear to eat them myself. I have to sell them because I still need to buy diesel and repair the boat. I never expected this one catch to be worth more than 20,000. I was so excited that I paced around the house twice. The soul of the sea god is really amazing. I left my phone number on the website's message board, and in less than 5 minutes, they called. A woman with a soft, pleasant voice asked if I was Mr. Qin who wanted to sell a 5-gene 4-liang wild large yellow croaker. I said yes and asked how much they were offering. She said they first needed to confirm a few things. It had to be wild, the weight couldn't be less than 5 gene, and it had to be alive. She told me to add her on WeChat and send photos and videos, and they would appraise it right away. My lousy Android phone came free with a mobile top-up plan. It takes half a minute just to open WeChat. I took photos from 4 or 5 angles and sent over a video clip. She replied, asking me to wait a moment. After 10 minutes, she replied, after a preliminary appraisal, this is indeed a live wild large yellow croaker. The exact price will be negotiated on the spot tomorrow after an in-person inspection. I asked, didn't you say it would be no less than 4,000 per gene? She said that was the minimum price. If it really weighed 5 gene 4 liang, it would definitely be even higher. I sent over the address and lay on the bed with my heart pounding. Higher than that price meant more than 21,600. Su Haicao's phone isn't the latest model. I heard the newest one costs more than 8,000. If I sold the fish and bought her the latest model, she'd definitely be so happy she'd hug me and kiss me. Then there'd really be hope for us getting together. Early the next morning, I went to Su Haicao's house, wanting to share the good news with her right away. The Su family's house was beautifully built, a 3-story self-built home with a big yard too. Her dad, Su Kun, was the village chief, and his salary was considered high in the village. Her mom, Xia Dongmei, ran a small shop in the village, and business was pretty good. When I reached the door, Xia Dongmei happened to be opening it. When she saw me, she said, Xiaochi, Haicao is about to go to the village entrance to pick up some leaders. She doesn't have time to chat with you. I said I had something important to say and would only need a few minutes. Xia Dongmei called upstairs, and Su Haicao answered in a clear voice. Just hearing her voice made my whole body feel good, and I couldn't help grinning foolishly. Xia Dongmei frowned when she saw that. Xia Dongmei went out to restock, and Su Haicao came downstairs very soon after, flicking her just-dried hair. The scent of shampoo wafted over. She asked me how I was planning to deal with what happened yesterday. I didn't answer. After glancing around and seeing no one nearby, I leaned in and lowered my voice. Last night I got in touch with someone to buy that wild large yellow croaker, and the price is very high. Leaning in closer, I could even smell her fragrance, so nice. She asked in surprise how much. I said at least more than 20,000, and that after selling it I'd take her to get a new phone. Her first reaction was that I was talking nonsense. There are too many scammers online, don't believe them. Besides, even if you do make money, you have to pay back Ma Tianbao that 10,000 yuan for the car repair first. I immediately took out my phone and showed her the WeChat chat history. After reading it, she pondered for a long while before finally saying, "This can't be a scam, can it?" Su Haicao earnestly tried to reason with me. Let me tell you, there are a lot of scammers online these days. They often talk it up online like it's the greatest thing ever. When the time comes, not only might you fail to make any money, they might even swindle that fish away from you. After all, as a college graduate, she had seen more of the world, so what Su Haicao said wasn't completely baseless. But Qin Xiaochi didn't accept that reasoning and shook his head. What you're saying makes me sound like some kind of idiot, doesn't it? They said they'd come to inspect the goods in person, and they'd be paying in cash. If he starts hemming and hawing, how could I possibly hand over the fish before getting the money? You're the one who thinks the world is too simple. Forget it, I'm not talking anymore. I need to go pick up the leaders now. Bye-bye. Su Haicao looked at the time, figured it was about time, and left, leaving Qin Xiaochi standing there in a daze. Oh well, and who knows when that woman from the company he contacted on WeChat will come to the village. Qin Xiaochi thought for a moment. There was still one more thing he had to do right away. Yesterday I secretly took the small diesel skiff out and burned quite a bit of fuel. I need to go to the gas station at the village entrance to get some diesel and fill up the tank first. Otherwise, when Mom and Dad come back tomorrow and notice the fuel is low, I'll probably get scolded again. He felt around on himself and found he only had 30 yuan. With diesel at 6 yuan per liter, he could only buy 5 liters. He had used at least 20 liters going out to sea yesterday, which would cost 120 yuan, so it probably wouldn't be enough. After thinking it over, Qin Xiaochi decided to sweet-talk Uncle Lu, who ran the gas station, and try to get 20 liters on credit first. He would pay the rest after selling that wild large yellow croaker. Unexpectedly, just as he arrived, Qin Xiaochi spotted at a glance that a gas station, usually empty at this hour, actually had a very luxurious-looking black sedan parked there. Uncle Lu. Seeing Uncle Lu bent over and saying something to the person in the black luxury sedan, Qin Xiaochi quickly waved and shouted, "Why are you yelling? Wait until I finish this business." As soon as Uncle Lu saw it was Qin Xiaochi, he immediately replied impatiently. Then he lowered his head again and asked the person in the car, "Miss, we're out of 98-octane gasoline at this station, and we won't restock until tomorrow. We only have 93-octane. If there's really no other way, would you like to put in some 93-octane for now?" Then a soft and pleasant female voice answered from inside the car, "How far is number 72 in your village from here? If it really comes to it, I'll just walk. This 8 million Bentley owned by the company can't take 93-octane. Number 72 in the village? Isn't that his own home address?" Qin Xiaochi, who had been standing idly by, sprang over almost instinctively the moment he heard that. "It's not far, just a 20-minute walk. Our home is at number 72. Qin Xiaochi's sudden move almost shoved Uncle Lu off balance. Uncle Lu glared and shouted, "Qin Xiaochi, are you crazy? Can't you see I'm talking business here? Bumping into me is one thing, but if you scratch this Bentley, even if your family sold your house, you still couldn't afford to pay for it." Unexpectedly, as soon as the woman inside the car heard the name Qin Xiaochi, she immediately opened the door, got out, looked him over, and asked, "Are you Mr. Qin?" When he got a clear look at this beauty's face and figure, Qin Xiaochi almost cried out in shock. Goodness, this beauty was 170 tall, with light makeup on an exquisite oval face. She wore a white women's blazer on top and a black short skirt with flesh-colored stockings below, a professional outfit, paired with a set of high heels. Her beautiful face and curvy, stunning figure made people's imaginations run wild. And listening to that voice up close, wasn't it the very same woman's voice who had called him and sent him WeChat messages last night? Oh wow, could this beauty be the one the company sent to buy the fish? Yes, I'm Qin Xiaochi. Are you? Qin Xiaochi hurriedly nodded like a pecking chicken. Hello, Mr. Qin. I'm Yuzi, Tianmanyu, the one who spoke with you last night. Tianmanyu extended her slender hand in front of Qin Xiaochi and shook hands with him. Qin Xiaochi froze for a moment before finally reaching out to clasp her hand. Goodness, it was so soft, fragrant, and smooth. Uncle Lu, standing to the side, was already dumbfounded. Xiaochi, she's here for you? She's here for me. Qin Xiaochi remembered the matter of buying diesel, so he let go of Tian Manyu's little hand and turned to Uncle Lu, saying, "By the way, Uncle Lu, I want to get 20 liters of diesel to take back. Can you give me a bucket to put it in?" Uncle Lu quickly grabbed a bucket, filled it with 20 liters of diesel, and handed it to Qin Xiaochi. Just as Qin Xiaochi was thinking about how to ask the other party for credit, Tian Manyu smiled sweetly again and said, "Is it the diesel Mr. Qin used for fishing yesterday? How much is it?" 120 yuan. Uncle Lu still hadn't figured out what was going on and wondered why the beauty was asking this. To his surprise, Tian Manyu directly took out 2 red banknotes from her purse and handed them to Uncle Lu. "Here's 200 yuan, no need for change." Qin Xiaochi was stunned too, and Tian Manyu quickly said to him, "Since it's a cost of fishing, our company will reimburse it." "Thank you." No matter what the other party was up to, Qin Xiaochi naturally wouldn't refuse such a good thing as someone paying for him. "By the way, does this oil need to be delivered back to your home?" Tian Manyu asked again. Qin Xiaochi thought, "Isn't that obvious? Should it just be left here?" So he nodded. Tian Manyu immediately turned to the driver and said, "Put the oil in the trunk. Take it to Mr. Qin's home, and we'll head over together on the way." So, Uncle Lu could only stare in complete bewilderment as the 8 million yuan Bentley drove off with a 20-liter diesel barrel. Am I seeing things? A beautiful woman riding in this kind of luxury car is actually hauling diesel for poor kid Qin Xiaochi. What the hell is this world coming to? Uncle Lu looked up to the sky and let out a long sigh. After arriving at the house and unloading the diesel barrel, Tian Manyu proposed immediately inspecting that wild large yellow croaker on the spot. There was another man in the car, and Tian Manyu said he was a fish expert who had come specifically today to appraise it. Qin Xiaochi immediately led the two of them to the backyard. The fish expert didn't waste any time. Upon seeing the wild large yellow croaker, he showed delight and immediately got to work. He put on specialized waterproof gloves and took out special measuring and weighing tools, then pulled out a magnifying glass and gave it a thorough inspection from top to bottom, spending a full quarter of an hour. Only after putting away his tools did the fish expert nod and say softly to Tian Manyu, "Manager Tian, this is indeed a fresh wild large yellow croaker produced in the East China Sea, weighing 5 jin 4 liang 8 qian." After saying that, the expert withdrew first, leaving only Tian Manyu and Qin Xiaochi in the courtyard. "Mr. Qin." Tian Manyu sat sideways on the chair, and Qin Xiaochi couldn't take his eyes off those long legs and silk stockings. "I'll be direct. This wild large yellow croaker is even better than I expected. Not only is it large, it has no injuries or diseases, and it weighs a full 5 jin 4 liang 8 qian, which is 5.48 jin. You surely also know that for wild large yellow croaker, even an extra 1 qian will raise its price accordingly. Our company is also very sincere in wanting to purchase this fish from you." Tian Manyu said with a smile. "You look like an honest person, so I'll quote you a fixed price directly here. What do you think? Do you agree?" Qin Xiaochi thought the other party was going to haggle the price down, so he asked a little nervously, "A fixed price? Don't try to rip me off. There were strong winds at sea yesterday, and it wasn't easy at all to catch this fish. Yeah, I almost lost my life. If you're trying to cut the price, I won't accept it." Qin Xiaochi had already mentally prepared himself to bargain. But unexpectedly, the price Tian Manyu quoted was, "There were force 8 sea winds yesterday, and I know that going out to sea to fish was very dangerous. So, to show our sincerity, our company has decided to increase the price by 30%. A fixed price, 48,000 yuan for this wild large yellow croaker. It sounds auspicious too. Do you think it's suitable? If it is, I brought cash with me, and we can complete the transaction on the spot." With that, Tian Manyu directly opened her purse and took out 5 thick bundles of brand new red banknotes. What? Even with the extra 8 qian, based on last night's estimate of 4,000 yuan per jin, 28,000 would already have been generous. How did it suddenly go up by another 20,000, making it 48,000 yuan? Qin Xiaochi was dumbfounded. He had seen people come to buy things at the door, but never seen someone add 20,000 directly to buy a single fish. Well, these aren't counterfeit bills, are they? Looking at those thick stacks of red banknotes, Qin Xiaochi still hadn't quite come back to his senses. My God, let alone him. Even Qin Xiaochi figured that if his own father were still here, he would probably be dazzled by the scene before them. How could people from a small fishing village like theirs have ever seen anything like this? "Mr. Qin, you're joking." Seeing Qin Xiaochi standing there dumbfounded, Tianmanyu couldn't help covering her mouth and chuckling. Although our Donghai Ocean Company can't compare with those publicly listed big companies, we are still a properly registered and listed company. How could there possibly be any use of counterfeit money? If Mr. Qin is really worried, you can. Tianmanyu had originally wanted to remind Qin Xiaochi that even if he wanted to check the bills a little, that would be no problem. But how could she have expected that before she had even finished speaking, this dazed young man in front of her would actually scoop up those red banknotes straight into his arms? No need, no need. I believe you. Qin Xiaochi grinned, showing his white teeth, and said with a chuckle, that's good. If Mr. Qin has yellow croaker of this size in the future, you're also welcome to keep contacting us. As she spoke, Tianmanyu did not forget to politely extend her hand and shake Qin Xiaochi's. Definitely. They had come quickly, and the Donghai Ocean Company group left quickly as well. After politely handing over her business card, Tianmanyu led the people accompanying her straight back into the Bentley and drove away. It was only quite a while after they had left that Qin Xiaochi finally came back to his senses. I'm rich. Who would have thought this would actually work out? Looking at the thick stacks of red banknotes before him, Qin Xiaochi immediately felt an incomparable sense of satisfaction. After marveling for a moment, he hurriedly took out his phone to share the good news with Su Haicao. There was probably no one happier than Qin Xiaochi at this moment. What, really? All right, see you in a bit. Listening to the crisp and pleasant voice on the other end of the phone, Qin Xiaochi felt as if his whole heart were about to float away. After changing clothes, he dashed straight toward the village entrance in no time. And just then, in that familiar Bentley in the distance, the fish expert who had just inspected the yellow croaker finally looked at Tianmanyu with a puzzled expression. Manager Tian, although this yellow croaker is indeed a rare item that's almost impossible to find on the market right now, there was really no need for you to say so much to him. Was there? He wasn't saying this because he had any objection to Tianmanyu's actions. But in his impression, although Manager Tian before him was not one of those icy beauty CEOs who kept people at arm's length, there was still a limit to how cordial she was with others. Under normal circumstances, handing over a business card directly would have been enough. As for something like a handshake, that was basically out of the question. That was something Manager Tian would only do in the case of a truly large-scale business cooperation. Uncle Lee, don't you think that young man's behavior just now was quite interesting? Tianmanyu smiled faintly. And at her words, the fish expert whom Tianmanyu called Uncle Lee also involuntarily pictured Qin Xiaochi's dumbfounded expression. His brows furrowed slightly, and then he shook his head. For a fisherman who spends his days out at sea like this, getting lucky once or twice once in a while is nothing unusual. I suppose there won't be another chance to meet in the future. Uncle Lee sighed inwardly. With a slight press of his foot, the Bentley drove straight onto the Ring Expressway, completely leaving behind the small fishing village where Qin Xiaochi was. Meanwhile, after meeting up with Su Haicao, Qin Xiaochi finally caught the bus at the village entrance. This was also a change that only came about because Su Haicao personally took things in hand after graduating from university in the big city. In Qin Xiaochi's original memory, during the time before Su Haicao had returned, going from the village into the city had always been an extremely troublesome affair. Not to mention that they were basically all muddy roads. Even if you drove out on a tractor, there weren't even 2 places to refuel. So when Su Haicao fought hard to get a bus stop approved, the villagers thanked her a great deal. Although the road was still the same muddy one, having direct transportation made travel much more convenient after all. Before long, Qin Xiaochi and Su Haicao had already gotten off the bus. Come on, Su Haicao, you can't not believe me. I really sold that fish for tens of thousands. As for Qin Xiaochi, he unexpectedly had a bitter look on his face at this moment. Along the way, he had gone to enormous lengths to explain it to Su Haicao, but she just refused to believe him. Wasn't it just that he had been in a hurry when he went out and casually picked a slightly thinner wad of red bills? Although it wasn't 10,000, Qin Xiaochi was still confident he could afford today's expenses. All right, stop fooling around. Haven't we already arrived at the department store? Let's go in and talk. Although she didn't believe Qin Xiaochi's words, perhaps because she was happy, Su Haicao smiled, then directly grabbed Qin Xiaochi and headed toward the tall building in front of them, unable to hide the joy at the corners of her mouth. After all, no matter what, they had grown up together. And on top of that, after encountering something so dangerous yesterday, the sudden good news left Su Haicao unable to fully process it for a while, which led to her current loss of composure. It wasn't until they walked into the department store and she saw passers-by on the road casting envious and jealous looks behind her that Su Haicao finally came to her senses, and half of her fair little face flushed red in an instant. Hey, Su Haicao, don't be in such a hurry. Huh, weren't you using an Apple phone before? Why are you heading to the Huaxin phone shop? Seeing Su Haicao like this, Qin Xiaochi still hadn't quite reacted for the moment. Before he could savor that instant of soft tenderness just now, an abrupt voice suddenly rang out. Yo, isn't this Su Haicao? I heard that after graduating from college, you gave up the chance to stay and work in the city and went back to that dirt-poor place of yours to be a village official. But I didn't expect that going to a poor place wasn't enough. Now even your sense of style has become this tacky? Looking toward the sarcastic voice, Qin Xiaochi finally noticed that a man in a sharp suit was staring at him with an amused expression. Tacky. Qin Xiaochi couldn't help but freeze for a moment and instinctively looked himself over. Wasn't this fine? Although none of the clothes were expensive, just cheap stall goods from the market at the village entrance, Qin Xiaochi considered himself quite clean at least. He should at least count as neat and tidy, right? And Su Haicao beside him had completely turned cold by now. Her originally blushing, lovely face was now covered with frost. Lu Feng, what exactly do you mean by talking like that? So he was Su Haicao's college classmate. Qin Xiaochi suddenly understood, but only then did he realize that at the entrance of the department store, more and more eyes were turning toward the few of them. In a small county town like theirs, there were not many places that could be considered commercial centers to begin with. Now that there was such a good show to watch, every passerby present was interested. And even with those needle-like, stinging gazes, the college classmate Su Haicao called Lu Feng clearly didn't care in the slightest. What do you mean? What do I mean? Lu Feng teasingly shifted his gaze away from Qin Xiaochi. In his subconscious, a little fisherman as hopelessly rustic as this really wasn't worth a second glance from him. His pride as a college student made it impossible for him to regard Qin Xiaochi as an equal at all. After turning his gaze back to Su Haicao, the mockery in Lu Feng's words grew even stronger. Su Haicao, you can't say I treated you badly back then, can you? Qin Xiaochi found Lu Feng's words somewhat baffling, but Su Haicao's face darkened all at once. It was as if she had thought of something unpleasant, even disgusting. And before Qin Xiaochi could figure out what Lu Feng meant, Lu Feng spoke again. Although my family, Lu Feng's family, can't be called the very best in our county town, we'd still be considered well off, right? If I pursued you, and you, Su Haicao, didn't think much of me, fine, but did you really have to find such a bumpkin? Whoosh. As soon as Lu Feng finished speaking, the bystanders all shifted their gazes from the two of them to Qin Xiaochi at the side. Just a moment ago, they hadn't even counted Qin Xiaochi as part of this dispute. It wasn't that Qin Xiaochi was short. If you really had to say, Qin Xiaochi's 1.72-meter height even gave him a bit of the delicate good looks rarely seen in Fisherman. But if you factored in what he was wearing, then it really was asking too much of people. How is brother Xiaochi a bumpkin? Su Haicao was so angry for a moment that even the way she addressed Qin Xiaochi changed on the spot. But no matter how much she argued her case, Lu Feng's words still caused a huge stir, and not a single one of the onlooking passersby managed to take Su Haicao's soft defense to heart. Yeah, this girl's taste is way too bad. Exactly. It's not that we're looking down on that kid, but isn't that young man in Western clothes obviously a better match for this girl? I think this girl must have been tricked by someone's sweet talk. The bystanders all chimed in one after another, loving the drama and only wanting to make it bigger, completely unwilling to listen to Su Haicao's explanation. On their own, they sentenced Qin Xiaochi to death. In their eyes, in this poor place of theirs, one look was enough to tell that Su Haicao was no ordinary family's daughter. At the very least, she wasn't someone the current Qin Xiaochi was worthy of. And now, after hearing Lu Feng go on like this, they all became even more animated and started criticizing Qin Xiaochi one after another instead. Lu Feng, if you stopped me just to humiliate me, then your goal should already have been achieved. If there's nothing else, I'm leaving first. As the bystanders continued their discussion, Su Haicao's face had long since turned dark purple. Today, Qin Xiaochi had only kindly thought of accompanying her to buy a phone to compensate her. But her phone accidentally falling into the water had never really had much to do with Qin Xiaochi in the first place. He had even risked his life to save hers. If she still asked Qin Xiaochi to compensate her, she herself would feel too embarrassed. This time, when they came out, Su Haicao's original intention was actually just to have Qin Xiaochi accompany her to look at phones. When it really came time to pay, Su Haicao definitely would not let Qin Xiaochi do it. But now, although the other party clearly meant well, he was being maliciously slandered just because the person accompanying him was her. As long as she left, so what if people blamed her instead? Lowering her head and biting her lip lightly, Su Haicao was about to pull away Qin Xiaochi, who was still in a dazed state beside her, when Lu Feng stopped her. You should have gotten the news about the class reunion in a few days too, right? Seeing how embarrassed Su Haicao looked, for some reason, much of the resentment Lu Feng had long kept bottled up in his heart seemed to ease considerably. At that time, in order to deepen the friendship among our classmates at the reunion, if I remember correctly, there seems to be a ballroom dancing segment. Ballroom dancing? Hearing Lu Feng's words, Qin Xiaochi was slightly taken aback. Although it was true that their fishing village was poor and backward, and had even been included in a key poverty alleviation project group, their village still did have those brick-sized televisions that several households shared. Qin Xiaochi still knew about things like ballroom dancing, which in the past had been regarded by high society as a social dance. But Qin Xiaochi couldn't figure out why the other party would suddenly bring this up here. I think. Su Haicao, you still haven't found yourself a dance partner, have you? Lu Feng put away his originally teasing smile and smiled instead. But if anyone observed carefully, it wouldn't be hard to notice that. At this moment, this guy was brazenly using a gaze that was hard for others to detect, staring fixedly at the front of Su Haicao's body. Yet Su Haicao hadn't noticed Lu Feng's line of sight either. At this moment, she was gritting her teeth and keeping her little head lowered, doing her best not to look at other people's gazes. Otherwise, she would probably find Lu Feng even more disgusting. I don't, Su Haicao said, and without even turning her head, she pulled Qin Xiaochi, who was still standing there in a daze, wanting to pull Qin Xiaochi away from this troublesome place. She didn't want to stay in this place for even a moment. But just when she wanted to spit out the word go viciously, she was surprised to discover that Qin Xiaochi, who originally wasn't much taller than her, was now actually like a smelly, hard rock. She couldn't pull him at all. Haicao already has a dance partner. Looking into Lu Feng's eyes, Qin Xiaochi's tone could simply be described as resolute. What? Hearing Qin Xiaochi's words, Lu Feng couldn't quite react for a while. According to his observation, Qin Xiaochi was nothing more than a timid, trouble-averse bumpkin. He had been shouting here for quite a while just now, yet the other party hadn't reacted at all, and hadn't even spoken a single word in support. A man like that, let alone Su Haicao. Even he, Lu Feng, felt he looked down on the other party. But why did this idiot have to speak up at this very moment? I'll say it again. Haicao has a dance partner, and that mysterious dance partner is me. Gently tugging on Su Haicao, who wanted to leave. Qin Xiaochi looked straight at the man in a suit and leather shoes before him. His simple clothing did not diminish his confidence in the slightest. At this, let alone Lu Feng, even Su Haicao, who had originally wanted to leave quickly, froze in place. When did Brother Xiaochi become so confident? In Su Haicao's heart, this strange sentence popped out involuntarily. Wait, this doesn't seem to be the point, right? How come I myself never heard that my dance partner for the ball is Brother Xiaochi? Forget that. I don't think I've ever heard that Brother Xiaochi even knows how to dance, have I? Realizing this, no matter how awkward it was, Su Haicao still couldn't help secretly tugging at Qin Xiaochi's hand. What made Su Haicao do this? Was of course not any ambiguity in their relationship, but because she really didn't want Qin Xiaochi to be laughed at for helping her save face. What Su Haicao didn't know was that as soon as this gesture fell into Lu Feng's eyes, the other party saw right through it at a glance. Ha 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 ha, I'm not mocking you. But you, a bumpkin, know how to dance. Understanding the hidden layer of meaning in Su Haicao's actions, Lu Feng was already laughing so hard his eyes nearly disappeared, and even his body bent over from laughter. As for the onlooking passers-by, they had more or less seen what was going on too. Wasn't that kid just asking for trouble by doing this? From the way he looked, there was no way he could know how to dance. He probably didn't even know what one was supposed to do when dancing. Wasn't that just harming the girl? Exactly. Did he even know that the one who would be laughed at then wouldn't be just himself? However, the voices of the passers-by didn't seem to affect Qin Xiaochi's confidence, or rather, they didn't change Qin Xiaochi's mind. Taking a deep breath, Qin Xiaochi stared fixedly at Lu Feng. I'll say it one last time. Haicao will definitely attend the class reunion, and I'll be her dance partner. When that day comes, I'll definitely be the coolest guy on the dance floor. It's completely over. Forcibly suppressing the urge to slap Qin Xiaochi awake, Su Haicao no longer even had the strength to make a facepalm gesture. After quickly pulling Qin Xiaochi away, Lu Feng still hadn't fully recovered from what Qin Xiaochi had just said. At most, I'll just lose a little face together with Brother Xiaochi, but once we get back to the village, I absolutely have to persuade Brother Xiaochi to give up this stupid idea. Having roughly made up her mind, Su Haicao could no longer care about so much. It wasn't that she couldn't see Qin Xiaochi's good intentions, but good intentions and actually having the ability were two completely different things. In any case, She had made up her mind. If she really couldn't talk Qin Xiaochi out of it, then it wasn't like she couldn't let Qin Xiaochi go with her to the class reunion. It would also happen to be a good opportunity to make brother Xiaochi understand that being with him was impossible. Letting out a faint sigh, Su Haicao tugged Qin Xiaochi into the Huaxin mobile phone store. As for Lu Feng, who was still at the entrance of the department store, only now did he finally come back to his senses. Laughing so hard, he was about to collapse onto the floor. Even though the people around him were all casting him puzzled looks, he paid them no mind at all. Ha ha ha. He's her dance partner. Ha ha ha. And even the coolest guy on the dance floor. Is that person really an idiot? After entering the phone store, although the sales staff inside, because of Qin Xiaochi's clothing, more or less cast a few strange looks at him. Life was ultimately not an online novel, and it wasn't possible for everyone to hurl abuse at you just because you were poorly dressed. They merely looked at Qin Xiaochi a couple more times before introducing Huaxin phones to the two of them with professional smiles. In the end, however, Su Haicao still couldn't refuse Qin Xiaochi. Under Qin Xiaochi's strong urging, Su Haicao was forced to choose a phone that was practically among the highest spec models in the entire store, and with Qin Xiaochi paying the bill, today's outing came to an end. No wonder it's the best domestic phone brand. It's making me want to buy one too. On the way home, Qin Xiaochi couldn't help muttering. It wasn't that he hadn't brought enough money. Although he had casually taken the smallest stack of cash Tianman Yu had paid him, it still amounted to a full 8,000 yuan. Although Huaxin phones were also an international first-tier phone brand, they had always treated their own people very well, and even their most high-end model was only close to 4,000 yuan. Not to mention that the phone Su Haicao picked was only a mid to upper range model. It was just that Qin Xiaochi felt that changing his phone for the time being didn't seem all that useful, so he simply didn't buy one. What a pity. Su Haicao said there were still some things in the village she had to deal with, so she left first. Otherwise, going on a date and having a meal with her would have been nice. Qin Xiaochi talked to himself, sighing helplessly, but his steps were still light and cheerful. That was until he heard shouting near his front door. Where the hell is Qin Xiaochi right now, that bastard? I'm going to tear his house apart. Oh my dama, Irma, please don't. Xiaochi may have done something wrong, but you don't have to go this far. Humph, did something wrong? I think he's got the nerve of a beast. Aunt Lu, you don't know. He directly crashed and damaged my brother's newly bought used car. Used car? Dama and Irma? Qin Xiaochi was slightly stunned, and the scene of Ma Tianbao trying to run him over with a car yesterday immediately surfaced in his mind. It was clearly Ma Tianbao who had wanted to drive into him and kill him. So how did it go around in a circle and turn into us being the ones who made him crash? But before Qin Xiaochi could figure it out, the shouting of the Ma brothers came over again. Aunt Lu, I can see it's not easy for you with a whole family to look after, so you'd better stay out of this. Otherwise, if the hoe in my hand tears your home apart too, don't blame me. Looking at Aunt Lu blocking the way, a fierce glint flashed in Ma Tianxiang's eyes. From the way he carried himself, he clearly really wanted to make a move. But even so, Aunt Lu, as a neighbor, had watched Qin Xiaochi grow up. Now that Qin Xiaochi's parents weren't around and there was no one to take charge, even if she was afraid, she couldn't just ignore it. Lu Haihua, stay out of this. Just as Aunt Lu still wanted to block them, a heavy male voice sounded from behind. Along with that voice, a limping man also walked out of the house. He was Lu Haihua's husband. For people who make their living on the water, they live at the mercy of the weather. Although they can get a good harvest when luck is on their side, the risks are always proportional. The year before last, because of a terrifying storm, this man directly lost his right leg forever. But even so, he still felt fortunate. Not for any other reason. At least he was still alive. But ever since then, because he had lost the ability to earn an income, life for Aunt Lu's family had become increasingly tight. They had originally still been able to help support Qin Xiaochi's family a little, but now they could only rely on each other to barely get by. This isn't something we can meddle in. Listen to me and go inside. The man sighed, and a trace of helplessness flashed in his clouded eyes. Qin Xiaochi was someone Aunt Lu had watched grow up, and hadn't he watched him grow up too? Even a fool could see that the Ma brothers were clearly the ones in the wrong, but they were also just a poor family. Seeing how life was already becoming impossible to carry on, how could they have the ability to stand in the way of the village tyrant? But it wasn't that Aunt Lu didn't understand what her husband meant, but she just couldn't get over watching the Ma brothers run wild here like this. Aunt Lu, it's okay, I'll handle this myself. The little fishing village wasn't big to begin with, and although he didn't know why, he could now hear the voices at his doorstep from so far away. This was no longer something Qin Xiaochi should be thinking about right now. At this moment, without even looking at the Ma brothers, he already knew how overbearing they were. And when he thought of lonely and helpless Aunt Lu probably blocking them for him for quite a while, a nameless rage rose in Qin Xiaochi's heart. Xiaochi, why did you come back? You need to go now? This isn't something you can handle. Hurry and contact your parents. Only if they come back will there be room to turn this around. Seeing that Qin Xiaochi had run back at a time like this, Aunt Lu was so anxious that she was about to cry. How could she not know what the Ma brothers were like? They said they were going to tear Qin Xiaochi's house apart, but what valuables did his house have? At most they'd smash this and break that, and once they'd vented their anger, this matter would more or less be over. As long as Qin Xiaochi's parents came back, no matter how overbearing the Ma brothers were, the Ma family wouldn't make things too difficult. In their little fishing village, this kind of thing was long since nothing unusual. But what she never expected was that after she had said all that, Qin Xiaochi still stood there foolishly staring at the Ma brothers. What, kid, you're actually not running? Apparently feeling surprised too, Ma Tianxiang looked strangely at Qin Xiaochi in front of him and couldn't help but speak. In his experience, anyone else would probably have taken off running long ago, but this kid was still standing here. Could it be that he was frightened by how the two brothers looked just now? At that thought, Ma Tianxiang's gaze at Qin Xiaochi couldn't help turning contemptuous. And this kind of person wants to date Su Haicao? It's simply a toad lusting after swan meat. Contempt was contempt, but what needed to be said still had to be said. I suppose you haven't forgotten the nice thing you did yesterday, have you? It's time to pay for my car, right? Exactly, Qin Xiaochi. That was my brother's newly bought second-hand crown. With that hit you gave it yesterday, you directly smashed the engine, and the whole car is basically totaled. Let me tell you, it won't cost less than 30,000 yuan to fix. Hearing Ma Tianxiang's words, Ma Tianbao chimed in as well. Although he was also puzzled why Qin Xiaochi, who usually seemed quite sharp, was now standing here like a dumb goose. Since his own brother had spoken, he just had to follow along. As he spoke, he even quietly edged toward Qin Xiaochi's back. Clearly, he was afraid Qin Xiaochi would make a run for it. So he secretly boxed him in at the center. What, 30,000 yuan? The man at the side, who originally hadn't planned to get involved at all, couldn't help turning pale with shock after hearing Ma Tianxiang's words. Other people in the village might not understand, but Feng Dazhuang was obviously not among them. Back when Feng Dazhuang's body had not yet become like this, Feng Dazhuang's dream had been to rely on his own efforts to buy a second-hand car for transportation as soon as possible. Even later, after losing a leg in an accident, Feng Dazhuang would still look up car information whenever he had nothing to do, and whenever he passed the city's used car market, he would stop to take a look and feast his eyes on it. Ma Tianxiang's 2006 second-hand crown, if viewed back then, might indeed have been a super luxury car that only true business tycoons could afford to drive. But in the current used car market, it's only worth about 60,000 to 70,000 yuan. Asking for 30,000 yuan just for repairs, isn't that daylight robbery? As for the engine being smashed to pieces, that's even more nonsense. It was obviously something done on purpose just to make those claims sound plausible. Xiaochi, don't listen to the nonsense these two brothers are spouting. No matter how much you fix a second-hand crown, it wouldn't cost 30,000 yuan. You absolutely mustn't. Feng Dazhuang still wanted to say something more, but Ma Tianxiang silenced him with just a single look. He understood in his heart that, not to mention now that he had been left disabled, even in the past, the Ma brothers were not people he could afford to provoke. Much less now. Seeing Feng Dazhuang shut up, Ma Tianxiang immediately sneered. Qin Xiaochi, I'm not going to talk nonsense with you. I'll put my words right here today. If you don't hand over this 30,000 today, then your family will. Don't worry, I'll give you the 30,000 yuan. Qin Xiaochi's eyes had long been filled with coldness, and his words were firm and decisive. It wasn't that he was afraid of the Ma brothers, but he knew that if he really didn't produce the money today, the ones these two Ma brothers would probably make trouble for next would be Aunt Lu's family, who had come to stand up for him today. So he couldn't run from this, and he didn't want to either. Qin Xiaochi agreed so readily that even Ma Tianxiang was a little surprised. Hadn't their family already been classified by the village as a poor household? How could they possibly come up with 30,000 yuan? Could it be the savings his parents had secretly stashed away for their old age? Thinking that he might really squeeze some money out today, excitement flashed in Ma Tianxiang's eyes. But even with that possibility, he still didn't let his guard down. He quietly gave his younger brother Ma Tianbao a look, and the two brothers pressed in close, one on the left and one on the right, flanking Qin Xiaochi as they half-believingly entered Qin Xiaochi's home. Immediately, the scene before his eyes sent Ma Tianxiang into wild delight. Money. It really was money. Looking at the neat stacks of big red banknotes on Qin Xiaochi's table, Ma Tianxiang also had to make a great effort to resist the urge to just grab them and run. After all, he only wanted Qin Xiaochi to compensate him for the 3,000 yuan he had lost. Oh no, 30,000 yuan. Even people like them wouldn't do something illegal and criminal like that. Probably. As if he hadn't noticed Ma Tianxiang's burning gaze. Qin Xiaochi walked over to the red banknotes on the table on his own and directly picked up 3 stacks. According to Tian Manyu, each stack of these bills was exactly 10,000. And since he had taken the smallest stack earlier, the rest were naturally full amounts. But just as Qin Xiaochi picked up those 3 stacks of red bills and was about to hand them to Ma Tianxiang, a small knife radiating coldness was suddenly pressed against Qin Xiaochi's neck. Haha, Qin Xiaochi, we're about the same age and from the same village. So we can at least be considered brothers, right? Now hurry up and tell your brother, where did all this money of yours come from? Holding the small knife, Ma Tianxiang revealed a ferocious smile at the corner of his mouth. One look at him was enough to tell that this sort of sneaky thievery was not his first time doing it. But with everyone in and around the village watching, no matter how bold the Ma brothers were, they wouldn't dare do this in front of others. Now that they had followed Qin Xiaochi into his house and out of everyone's sight, what happened in here was no longer something Qin Xiaochi alone could explain clearly. Only, Ma Tianbao did not notice that even with a small knife at his neck, Qin Xiaochi showed not the slightest sign of panic in his eyes. On the contrary, a chilling level of calm surfaced in Qin Xiaochi's gaze. Nothing much, it's just that when we were harvesting the sea some time ago, we suddenly found a good spot. Qin Xiaochi's voice sounded very calm, not at all like someone being threatened. Unfortunately, the red banknotes in front of them were simply too dazzling. And Ma Tianxiang did not notice Qin Xiaochi's abnormality at all. Or rather, even if he had noticed, he probably would not have cared too much. After all, the Ma family had 2 brothers. And as Qin Xiaochi spoke, Ma Tianxiang, who was blocking Qin Xiaochi at the side, also had his eyes light up and hurriedly asked, "What kind of good spot is it?" "It's a fishing spot for large yellow croaker. If you fish there, there's a very good chance of catching large yellow croaker. And this money of mine." Qin Xiaochi indifferently glanced at the only remaining stack of red banknotes on the table before speaking again. "I earned it yesterday by catching large yellow croaker." It was actually large yellow croaker. The Ma brothers exchanged a glance and saw the gleam flashing in each other's eyes. The 2 of them usually loafed around all day, either bullying men and women or stirring up trouble in groups. But in the end, they were also children of seafaring families, so they knew the value of large yellow croaker. Although the money in front of them did not look like the normal selling price of 1 large yellow croaker, the Ma brothers gradually believed Qin Xiaochi's words. After all, if it really was large yellow croaker, then it truly might sell for such a good price. Go on, tell us everything you know, and tell us how you discovered that place. Next came Qin Xiaochi's account of what had happened yesterday. Of course, Qin Xiaochi directly glossed over the matter of the sea god's inheritance, and as for how that good spot was discovered, Qin Xiaochi had completely made it up, because he had absolutely no need for such a thing to catch large yellow croaker, and there was no such place at all. After all, large yellow croaker are living creatures. A school of fish is not like seedlings in a field. Then it won't run away. Even if Qin Xiaochi wanted to catch them, it was only thanks to the sea god's inheritance. Otherwise, if he wanted to find large yellow croaker, he'd have to rely on luck like everyone else. By the time he got to the end, the Ma brothers could no longer contain their excitement. One on each side, they pressed Qin Xiaochi along and headed straight outside. They wanted Qin Xiaochi to take them to that good spot too. "Hey, Zhuangzi, look, why have Xiaochi and the others come out again?" Aunt Lu, who was drying fishing nets beside the house, saw them and instinctively called out to her man. And Feng Dazhuang was right there beside her helping out. Ever since his legs had become like this, going out to sea had become nothing but a dream, so he could only help his wife with whatever he was capable of doing. And now he naturally saw the 3 people coming out of Qin Xiaochi's house as well. Looking at them, something seemed off. Why are they still following that kid Xiaochi? I told him to run quickly, but now something's happened. Aunt Lu slapped her thigh and suddenly remembered something, then was about to run into the house. Right, hurry and call old Qin, tell him to come back quickly, or something terrible might happen. But before Aunt Lu could leave, her husband grabbed her. What's wrong, Zhuangzi? This can't be delayed, or something really will happen. Seeing herself being held back by Dazhuang, Aunt Lu was frantic. Because of physical problems, the couple had never been able to have a child their whole lives. So in a way they had both treated Qin Xiaochi as their own child. Seeing that Qin Xiaochi was about to get into trouble, how could she not be anxious? Wait, don't worry yet. Look at Ma Tianxiang and the others. They don't seem like they're trying to make things difficult for Xiaochi. But Aunt Lu still wanted to say something. Don't worry. Xiaochi is a smart kid. I believe he'll definitely handle this properly. And it's not like you don't know why old Qin went to his relative's house. He won't be back anytime soon. Feng Dazhuang looked at the backs of the three as they left and silently shook his head. He had a gut feeling that Qin Xiaochi would be able to handle this. But if there really was any problem, he would be the first to call Qin Xiaochi's parents. After coming out of Qin Xiaochi's house, Ma Tianxiang naturally no longer had the guts to hold a knife to Qin Xiaochi's neck. But now, with the two brothers holding him up one on each side, it actually wasn't much different. They didn't believe this would let Qin Xiaochi escape anyway. What they didn't realize was that Qin Xiaochi had never intended to run at all. At this moment, there was a suppressed cold glint in Qin Xiaochi's eyes. Just like Uncle Feng had said, he had already thought of a solution to this from the very beginning. If he didn't give them the money, the Ma brothers would definitely come looking for trouble again, and even Aunt Lu's family would not have peace. But even if he did give it, Qin Xiaochi also understood that the other party would most likely covet his ability to make money, coming every so often to cause trouble. That really wasn't something a normal person could endure. In that case, it would be better to teach the two brothers a lesson directly. A lesson they would bitterly regret. Thinking of this, Qin Xiaochi moved even more briskly as he helped the Ma brothers untie the boat rope. It wasn't that the Ma brothers didn't care about the fuel cost for their fishing boat, but the moment they thought about getting rich very soon, they viciously threw the words fuel money to the back of their minds. After all, their fishing boat was one of the biggest among the nearby villages, and the place for storing fish far surpassed Qin Xiaochi's small fishing boat. With the mindset that being able to carry more meant earning more, the Ma brothers didn't pay attention to this instead. But gradually, Ma Tianxiang began to sense that something was wrong. Qin Xiaochi, where exactly are you steering this boat? Why are we getting farther and farther away? Ma Tianxiang narrowed his eyes slightly, and the way he looked at Qin Xiaochi gradually turned unfriendly as well. Generally speaking, in their fishing village, even when they went fishing, it was only in the nearby fishing grounds. And they would not go too far. After all, not only were there more unknown dangers in the open sea, but for small fishing boats like theirs, going too far out was itself quite dangerous. That's right, Qin Xiaochi, let me tell you, we Ma brothers are both on this boat. If you've got any funny ideas, you'd better drop them now, otherwise. If something really happens later, it won't be good. Ma Tianbao's gaze also gradually turned fierce, as if he might make a move at any moment. As everyone knows, people who make their living on the water do indeed have opportunities to earn high incomes. Take gooseneck barnacles, for example, the kind of seafood foreigners call seafood from hell. If you manage to gather them, the value is calculated in thousands or even tens of thousands of dollars. But corresponding to high returns is undoubtedly high risk. In this world, risk and return are always directly proportional. Yet when it comes to people who make their living on the water, even when there is high risk, whether they can obtain high returns still depends on fate. In a profession that lives at the mercy of the weather, how can you say that just because you risk your life, you'll definitely make a fortune? In a profession like this, drifting about on the sea, being careless and ending up like Uncle Feng with broken arms or legs would still count as getting off lightly. There are plenty more who have lost their lives. Ma Tianbao's meaning was also very obvious. If you, Qin Xiaochi, don't behave yourself, then don't blame us Ma brothers for deliberately creating some kind of accident. Aren't returns and risks always directly proportional? Still looking indifferently at the vast sea ahead, Qin Xiaochi spoke at this moment as if he had no feelings. For something as valuable as large yellow croaker, if you don't take on some risk, how could it be so easy to catch? Not to mention, if that good spot were in the inner sea, then everyone would probably have discovered that treasure trove long ago. How could it possibly have been my turn, Qin Xiaochi's? In every way, what Qin Xiaochi said could be called impeccable. Listening to Qin Xiaochi's words, although suspicion still remained in the eyes of the Ma brothers, they had already believed most of what he said. Right. If there were no danger, then how could there possibly be great profit? Thinking of this, the brothers Ma Tianxiang and Ma Tianbao instantly had a gleam flash through their eyes again, completely disregarding the danger involved. After all, for the vast majority of people, before they have been beaten down by society, they all think they are the chosen ones, the male lead in a wish fulfillment novel, born to change their fate. Only those who have been beaten down by society enough to fear it gradually come to truly understand things and know how to weigh choices and trade-offs. Unfortunately, such qualities could never exist in the two brothers, who had been throwing their weight around in the small fishing village since childhood. The small fishing boat was not fast, but it was still the biggest fishing boat in Qin Xiaochi's village. Though its horsepower couldn't compare to those behemoths, after nearly 20 minutes, they should have reached the inner sea by now. Gradually, Ma Tianxiang also sensed that something was strange. Before heading out today, didn't the weather forecast say the sky would be clear and the wind would be very light? So why has it started getting bumpy? Indeed, as Qin Xiaochi piloted the small fishing boat farther out to sea, although the previously calm surface was not yet rough enough to be called stormy, swells had already gradually begun to rise, and occasionally a big wave would make the three of them wobble for quite a while before they could stand straight again. No wonder Ma Tianxiang found it strange. That's right, and we've already gone so far out. By my reckoning, it should be almost 4 or 5 nautical miles by now. So why haven't we arrived yet? Hearing his cousin's words, Ma Tianbao also gradually sensed that something was off and spoke up. You should know that nautical miles are not the same as kilometers. Out at sea, just 1 nautical mile is nearly a full 2 kilometers long. Although the small fishing boat wasn't fast, after speeding along for 4 or 5 nautical miles, they should have arrived by now, right? Wait, no? Can the Qin family's fishing boat even go that far? A sense of foreboding involuntarily rose in the hearts of the Ma brothers at the same time, and almost simultaneously, Ma Tianxiang grabbed Qin Xiaochi by the collar. Qin Xiaochi, what the hell do you mean by this? Your family's crappy fishing boat basically can't even come this far. So what did you bring us brothers out here for? He looked indifferently at the person in front of him grabbing his collar, then saw that Ma Tianbao had already pulled out a small knife from his pocket, doing something as stupid as leaving the small knife behind at Qin Xiaochi's house. The Ma brothers were not that foolish, but in the current situation, Ma Tianbao couldn't help feeling that even having a small knife was useless. Without looking at Qin Xiaochi, Ma Tianbao's voice had already begun to tremble. See, cousin, what? Just spit it out if you've got something to say. Still clutching Qin Xiaochi's collar, Ma Tianxiang didn't notice at all what Ma Tianbao was looking at, and even if he had noticed his panic, he probably wouldn't have cared much. After all, at this moment, his mind was full of teaching this reckless brat a lesson. Unfortunately, in the next second, Ma Tianbao's words nearly scared Ma Tianxiang out of his wits. Cousin, the wind's picking up. No one knew what scene Ma Tianbao had seen, but it had frightened him so badly that even his speech began to tremble. This guy was the type who had long been used to bullying men and women alike. From childhood to adulthood, there had hardly been anything that could make him afraid. Yet now he was trembling like this from fear, which made the furious Ma Tianxiang come to his senses as well. When he turned around to look, Ma Tianxiang didn't even have the strength left to keep gripping Qin Xiaochi's collar anymore. Hey, Zhuzi, didn't the broadcast say there wasn't much wind today? So how come dark clouds are gathering now? Lu's wife, who had been sorting out the fishing nets and preparing to hang them up to dry, felt a tightness in her chest when she saw the sky. This was a lingering after-effect from Feng Dazhuang's accident. She still clearly remembered that when Dazhuang went out to sea that day, the sky had also been clear and bright, but in the blink of an eye it turned into a sky full of dark clouds, and then it directly started pouring rain and blowing strong winds. By the time he came back, he had become like this. Luckily, for safety's sake, Feng Dazhuang had only been working near the fishing harbor that day and hadn't risked going farther out. Otherwise, he probably wouldn't have just lost a leg. That's right. When we heard the broadcast today, we thought it was a good time to head out to sea. But how did it turn into this after only half a day's time? Looking at the dark clouds gathering ever more densely before him, Feng Dazhuang had evidently also recalled what happened back then, his face full of lingering fear. As the person involved, he knew better than anyone just how terrifying that kind of storm was. And as his words fell, the lighthouse's urgent siren rang out across the entire fishing village. This was clearly a signal that winds above Force 8 were coming. Attention, villagers of Haicao Village. Force 9 gale winds will appear over the scene next. Please immediately secure your boats at the dock, and any boats already at sea should return as soon as possible. Villagers of Haicao Village, attend. As the siren sounded, the village broadcast repeating over and over again tugged at the heartstrings of these families who made their living on the water. It's actually Force 9 gale winds. Back when I had my accident at sea, it was only Force 8 winds, so isn't this even worse than what I went through back then? Listening to the broadcast, Feng Dazhuang said. He immediately felt a dark cloud gathering in his heart, and that innate fear common to people who live on the water instantly enveloped him. But before he could remain afraid for long, a flash of panic, even stronger than fear, suddenly appeared in his eyes. Xiaochi seems to have gone out to sea with the Ma brothers. What did you say? Aunt Lu was also startled by her husband's words. She knew in her heart that, as long as there were strong winds above Force 6 at sea, all fishing boats had to stay docked at the pier. This was no longer a matter of taking risks for high returns. This was something that could cost lives at any moment. Then what should we do? We can't go out to sea to save them either. No. First go to the village committee to find the village chief and have them organize those people for maritime search and rescue. Aunt Lu was so anxious she was almost crying. As someone directly involved in a tragedy, no one knew better than her how terrifying that tragedy had been. Not to mention that when her husband went out to sea that day, it had only been force 8 winds on the surface of the sea, and now it was no longer just strong wind, but force 9 gale winds. Just as Aunt Lu was anxiously about to slam the door and leave, she bumped into someone solid as a rock. That person bore a 60 to 70% resemblance between the brows and eyes to the Ma brothers. At this moment, he was looking at Aunt Lu with an indifferent face, as if coming to a place like this was a great humiliation to him. I heard my 2 boys came here looking for that brat Qin Xiaochi. Where are they? The man who had come was none other than Ma Tianbao's eldest uncle, Ma Tianxiang's father, Ma Baohua. When Aunt Lu saw who it was, her heart involuntarily trembled with panic. Although it looked like the Ma brothers had forced Xiaochi out to sea, how could the Ma family possibly care about that? As the saying goes, like father, like son. The fact that the Ma brothers had turned out this way was naturally not without cause. Ma Baohua of the Ma family accounted for most of the reason. Although they were also part of Haicao village, the Ma family's seafood restaurant was opened in the county town. Even though it was just a single shop, it was enough for them to look down on a well-known impoverished little fishing village in such a poor county. Su Haicao, do you know something? To be able to make his way into the county town from such an impoverished little fishing village, Ma Baohua naturally counted as somebody of note, and Aunt Lu's little schemes could not escape his eyes. With just one glance, Ma Baohua had already figured it out. Aunt Lu had originally wanted to beat around the bush, but one look from Ma Baohua directly stopped that thought. That was Ma Baohua after all. Although everyone was part of Haicao village, that gap in status was not something this could bridge. Nearly all of Haicao village's income came from Ma Baohua, from the Ma family. The reason was simple. Only Ma Baohua had the ability to collect the fish they caught from this remote little fishing village. Once, a man from Haicao village accidentally offended this fearsome figure, and he directly refused to buy what the man had caught. In the end, the man still had to swallow his humiliation, scrape together some money here and there, buy quite a few things, and go to apologize in person. Only then was the matter dropped. This fellow, not just Aunt Lu, even the village chief of Haicao village didn't dare refuse to give him face. Of course, that wasn't to say there was some problem with the quality of the fish the villagers of Haicao village caught, or that it wouldn't sell if taken to the county town, but rather that they simply couldn't do it. For a village that had already been listed as a key poverty alleviation target, let alone cars or trucks, even a tractor had to be bought by several families pooling their money. Under such conditions, apart from Ma Baohua, there really were very few people who had a way to sell fish in the county town. And even if 2 or 3 families pooled their money to buy a tractor, so what? A tractor bought jointly by just 2 or 3 families isn't a car anyway. How much fish could it haul in one trip? Ma Tianxiang and the others went out to sea. After hesitating for a long time, Aunt Lu finally let out a sigh. It wasn't that she didn't want to help Qin Xiaochi, but that she simply couldn't. It would be somewhat better if her husband were still healthy, but now their 2-person household depends entirely on her to keep it going, and life is already hard enough. If they completely offend the Ma family that buys their fish, then her family will be completely finished. What did you say? Ma Baohua's eyes widened round, utterly unable to believe what he had just heard. Meanwhile, on the other side, the sea surface, which could still be called calm just a moment ago, had already churned up towering waves. Those waves, as tall as a person, would normally only appear along the shore during high tide, but now they had appeared right in front of the 3 of them. No, we have to head back immediately. At this moment, Ma Tianxiang had no other thoughts at all. Even if he wanted to deal with Qin Xiaochi, that would have to wait until they got back to Haicao village. As for now, how to stay alive was what Ma Tianxiang needed to think about. Head back. Can we still make it back? Seeing that the waves on the sea had already surged to nearly more than 3 meters high, Ma Tianbao's legs went weak and he collapsed directly onto the boat. As people who lived on the water, they understood the danger of such wind and waves all too well. Even without Feng Dazhuang's earlier example, they all knew in their hearts that under these conditions, the chance of surviving was almost less than 1%. Grabbing the collar of the collapsed Ma Tianbao, Ma Tianxiang shouted at all costs, "What the hell kind of nonsense are you talking about? I'm telling you, even if I die, I'll die making it back to Haicao village. Hurry up, do whatever you need to do, and you too, Qin Xiaochi." I'll slowly settle today's score with you after we get back. Right now, immediately, get me a bucket and bail out the water that got into the boat." After saying that, ignoring the reactions of the other two, Ma Tianxiang went to adjust the direction of the engine head, preparing to head back home. He did not want to give up that sliver of hope just like that. As Ma Tianxiang spoke, Ma Tianbao also gradually came back to his senses. A person's will to survive can ultimately overcome many things. Before the final thread of a person's nerves is snapped, they will always try their best to grasp the very last straw. And at this moment, Ma Tianxiang's words were undoubtedly the last life-saving straw in Ma Tianbao's heart. The instant it appeared, he clutched it tightly and refused to let go. He believed that as long as it was Brother Tianxiang, there would definitely be a way. Damn it. I haven't even had enough fun with the slutty women in the village. How can I just kick the bucket like this? Qin Xiaochi, what the hell are you doing? After all, it was one of the biggest fishing boats in Haitu village, with a total length of nearly over 10 meters. When they had previously gone out to sea, he had directly sat at the bow with Ma Tianbao, so he could remember the route to the good fishing spots. And when Ma Tianbao had earlier discovered the terrifying scene before their eyes, Ma Tianxiang still had not forgotten to take Ma Tianbao to the bow to observe the wind direction. But now when he wanted to walk to the engine at the stern, he discovered that Qin Xiaochi had silently shut off the engine. Under waves like these, shutting off the engine was practically suicidal. Yet Qin Xiaochi had turned it off, and he revealed an extremely meaningful smile to the two brothers.